Okay, good morning, everybody. I can see lots of people coming into our session today. We have over 200 people registered, so we're just going to give a few more seconds for some more people to come in. As you're coming in, please introduce yourself in the chat. We're so happy that you're joining us today. And then we will get started in a couple of minutes. Just some housekeeping things, and I'll repeat this as well, is that your mics and videos are obviously turned off. If you have any questions during this session, you can put them in the Q&A, but please introduce yourself in the chat. But remember to put your questions in the Q&A section so that we can answer them for you, either as we go along if we can, or definitely at the end. If we run out of time, we'll reach back to you and answer your questions. So as we go through the session, put your questions in the Q&A and introduce yourselves in the chat. All right, I think I'm going to get started. I know that more people are coming in, but let me start with, please allow me to begin our session today on behalf of the Mississauga Foundation by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands of the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and the most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge the systemic discrimination that many groups face who call this land their home. People come to Canada to seek a better life or to broaden their horizons, but because of the color of their skin, their religion, or some other characteristic, they are subject to discrimination. As we meet with each other today, let us commit to respect and uplift each other, to tear down the barriers of prejudice, discrimination, and hatred. Let us resolve to care for ourselves and each other and to build a just society for all. Welcome to the Grant Information Session 2025 of the Mississauga Foundation. I'd like to introduce our team. My name is Lorraine Crow. I'm the Director of Grants and Community Initiatives. With me today is Glenn Gomulka, our CEO and President, and Gavin Pollard, the Manager of Grants and Community Initiatives. On our back end, we have Pauline, our Office Manager, Harisha, our Marketing Person, and Deborah, who's also our Controller. So that's our team, and let's get ourselves started. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about the foundation, and we're going to talk about what's new for 2025. The new role of Vital Signs Report and its role in granting. And granting, you might have seen our ads that we're splitting up. We're going to certainly talk about that. We're actually not splitting up. We're just splitting up the granting round. And thank you for Harisha for all the great marketing that she's put out, not only for this session, but for our Vital Signs Report that we launched last Monday. For those of you that were not on that call, it is recorded on our website. And we put that in the chat as a link for you as well. But we'll talk more about that. In the agenda also, we'll be talking about our grant catalog of community needs. We'll have time for frequently asked questions. We'll go over all the important dates coming up regarding our granting, and we'll have time for Q&A. Again, make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A section so that we can keep them organized. All your microphones are turned off and your videos, because we have a lot of people on the call. But we certainly introduce yourselves in the chat. We're so happy that you're joining us today. Okay, so let's get started. All right, I'm going to put it over to Glenn, and he's going to talk about our president and CEO, and he's going to talk about the Mississauga Foundation. Glenn.
Thank you, Lorraine. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to participate in our annual grant information session. Granting season is always the most exciting time of year here at the foundation. I'm so glad to see so many charities are joining us today because we're going to be discussing some important changes to our granting process, and I think there's some very valuable information that you'll want to take away from today's session. I know that many of you on the call today are already quite familiar with the foundation, but I'm just going to take a few minutes to go over a little bit of background information and talk about some of the various funds that we have at the foundation. And as you are aware, we have rebranded and we are now the Mississauga Foundation. And our mission statement is harnessing generosity to drive transformational change. Our annual grant round, along with our vital signs, of course, are a significant part of how we deliver our mission statement. But we haven't just changed our name. We're working on several projects that are going to amplify our impact in the community, and we hope to have more news on that in the coming months as well. Just moving on to the next slide. The Mississauga Foundation is part of a national network of over 200 community foundations across Canada. And because of the reach of that through Community Foundations of Canada, we participate and deliver federal granting programs in our community. And over the past couple of years, those have included the COVID Relief Fund, the Investment Readiness Program, the Canadian Healthy Community Initiatives, as well as most recently, the Community Services Recovery Fund, which I know many of you participated and benefited from. But while we are a part of a national network, we are very locally focused and our impact is locally focused as well. Of course, we work with the local municipality and regional government, as well as grassroots leaders and charities such as yourselves to develop a deep understanding of the local issues in our community. And as Lorraine already talked about, our granting is guided by our Vital Signs report, which we launched last Monday. And we'll be doing some vital conversations to follow up on that. And this really helps us to identify the greatest need in our community. I think the link to the Vital Signs page on our website will be posted in the chat. I encourage you all to download the reports. There are a series of 4 reports there for you to look through. Lots of new information that we haven't had in prior years. And reflect on the Vital Signs because we'll be using that as our guide as we review applications to see which applicants are addressing the pressing needs in our community. Over the last since our inception in 2001, we've granted collectively over $26 million to charities in Mississauga. And I know today we're going to be talking about some specific grants under the Children and Youth Stream, Arts and Culture, Pendle, and the Chronic Disease Fund. And of course, these are all competitive grant streams where charities like yourselves apply for grants for project funding. But outside of the project granting streams, the foundation also has many types of funds that generate unrestricted funding for your organization. Donor advised funds are funds that are held by donors with the foundation. And every year they consult with the foundation and we talk to them about where to place their grants. We talk to them about where the most pressing needs are in the community. And one of the things Lorraine already mentioned is our catalog of community needs. We launched that last year, really as a tool to get more charities and more projects in front of our donor advised fund holders. So if you didn't apply through the catalog of community needs last year, I encourage you to do so this year. It's a great way to introduce your charity to some of our donor advised fund holders who might not otherwise know about your charity or the work that you're doing in our community. A donor designated fund is a fund set up by a donor that specifies a specific charity and it grants to that charity unrestricted funding in perpetuity. So if a donor has set up a fund for your organization, you receive those grants every year. You don't have to apply for them, they come automatically. And a charitable endowed fund is similar to a designated fund, except it's set up by the charity itself. And so any registered charity can create an endowed fund with the foundation. It can be started with a small donation. You can grow the fund over time. And when a charity creates its own endowed fund, all the granting goes back to the charity in perpetuity. So it's a great way for you to create a long-term source of discretionary funding for your organization. It's like creating your own foundation, except that we do all of the back office work on your behalf. And we've had a program here at the foundation for the last couple of years that provides matching funding for charities when they set up an endowed fund with the foundation. To set up a charitable endowed fund requires a minimum donation of $10,000. And so what we've done is encourage charities to create their own endowed fund by donating $5,000. And we create a match of $5,000, which create your charitable endowed fund. We now have over 20 charities that have built their own endowed funds with the foundation, and we have a few matches that are still available. So if you're interested in creating a charitable endowed fund, please reach out to us as soon as possible. I think we're going to place the link in the chat as well with some information about charitable endowed funds. So with that, I'm going to pass things back over to Lorraine to talk about our granting.
Okay. Thanks very much, Glenn, for that introduction. And again, if you have some questions, put them in the Q&A section. Okay, so let's get into the grant round and see, we're going to talk first about eligibility for the grant round. Okay, what is eligible? When you're applying, you have to be a registered charity, or you can be a not-for-profit as long as you partner with a registered charity. In our application, there's an agreement that you can sign if you're a not-for-profit with your registered charity, and you can apply that way. You have to be Mississauga based. It doesn't mean that you have to have your offices in Mississauga. You have to be serving residents of Mississauga. We do have some great charities that may have an office in Toronto, but they're serving Mississauga or in Brampton. But as long as you're serving residents of Mississauga and benefiting residents in Mississauga, you can apply. So it has to be Mississauga based. That's what that means. You have to be in good standing with CRA. There's a link on our website that can take you into the CRA information site, and you can check the status of your organization. You should know that you're filing with CRA, and you have to be in good status with them. So that's another eligibility requirement. Your previous grant reporting obligations have to be met. So if you received a grant last year, you probably have received a notice from us that all grant reports have to be due 30 days from the end of your project due date. However, we do need an interim report from you to the end of January if your project has not completed in this fiscal year. So those reports, interim reports, or a final report has to be due January 31st, 2024, for you to be able to apply for the 25 grant round if you received money from us last year. And again, there's been reminders sent out to you. And if you have any questions about that, please reach out to our grant team, either myself or Gavin, and we'll be able to guide you in the right direction for that. Now let's talk about ineligible projects. Again, if you're outside of Mississauga, say if you're servicing people in St. Catharines, then no, we are not going to be accepting your application. Has to be people in Mississauga. If your application is for a fundraising or a campaigning event, that is not eligible. If political or religious activities, sponsorships, scholarships, and bursaries are ineligible. I'll talk a little bit about the religious part. We do accept applications from faith-based organizations, but the project has to include the community and not specifically promoting your faith, okay? Ongoing operating expenses are not eligible, and any retroactive funding for a project is also ineligible. Again, if you have any questions on that, throw them in the Q&A or reach out to us. Okay, what are we looking for? And I get this question a lot. I've put in my application, what kind of, if I'm completing my application, what are the things I should be thinking about? First of all, does the mission of your charitable organization align with the focus areas of your grant? What does that mean, alignment? It means if you're an arts organization and all of a sudden you're applying for money to be a food bank, then that could be a mission drift. That's what we call it in our industry. So if you wanted to do something that's outside of your mission, then I would suggest that you partner with somebody who's an expert in that area. Okay, so when we're reading the application, we're going to say, you know, do you have expertise in this area? Can you do this? Are you aligned? And it also, are you aligned with the pillars of interest of the grant? And we'll get a little more into what each grant is all about. Is the project efficient? Is the project cost efficient, and can it be completed within 1 year? So that's basically another part that we're looking for. Do you have the capacity in your organization to actually complete this project? If it's a very large project, and say you only have 2 or 3 people in your organization, please, in your application, explain to us how you're going to pull this off. Is it going to be with a lot of volunteers? Where are you going to find these people? What kind of resources are you bringing in to complete this project? And especially if it's an expertise again that is out of your mission statement, make sure that you're aligned with experts to do this. So when we look at capacity, are you going to be able to deliver this program? Okay. The impact. The project has to benefit the community. And I would ask you again to reach back into our vital signs. There's a lot of data in there about what the needs of the community are, so you can make sure that your proposed project can benefit the community. Use that data to make sure that that impact question is answered. Is it sustainable? You're working on this project and we're funding it. What's the life of this project afterwards? Can you take some things that you've learned from this project and use in the future? Or can you build on this? Is it sustainable? So those are the things we're looking for: alignment, efficiency, capacity, impact, and is it sustainable? Okay, so I mentioned the vital signs report. And again, if you weren't able to join us last week, it's on our website. The recorded session with our partner Leger and also our partners from Nova Nordis. We're also on that call with our president, Glenn Gomoka, talking extensively about the very extensive research that we have done for this particular vital signs. There's a report card of the city, and that's a very interesting thing to look at as a start, but I would suggest you go into our full report and also our secondary research as well, to read through and look at all the data that's there talking about the needs of the community. When you go in to file an application for granting this year for 2025, you will see that the categories in our grant application are aligned with our vital signs report, and they are indicated here. So when you're looking at your grant application, then you will align your grant application with one and up to two vital signs indicators. So if you are, for instance, a safety project, but you're also working with with the community engagement, those would be two vital signs you could use. You can just use one, but you can have a maximum of two. So watch for those indicators in your grant application. And again, I can't stress enough, look at that vital signs report. It's got some great information, not only for granting from the community, from the Mississauga Foundation here, but also for other projects, and your strategic planning can also benefit from all that research. Next slide. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the grant catalog. And Glenn touched on the grant catalog briefly. Again, the grant catalog, this is a very simple application. It's just a one-pager. Again, it's about community needs here in Mississauga. What we're just asking for is your organizational name. Obviously, you're going to set up a profile in our system when you do that. These grants are unrestricted. However, when we bring these applications to our donor advised funders, they quite often like to know, how would you use this money? Okay, so you can completely say unrestricted, I'm going to use it for operations. That's totally fine. Or you can say, you know, we need art supplies for this particular program that we're doing for seniors, or you need, you know, to support some musicians to come in and entertain some seniors in a nursing home, something of that nature. So it also gives the donor advised person, the funder, an idea of how you would use this money. But again, it's unrestricted, and it's a maximum of $2,000 per application. One thing that we didn't do last year is we didn't indicate that there's only one application per charitable organization. We did get from some organizations several applications in our catalog. We could only take one, so we took the first one. But again, that's on us. So this year, one application per charitable organization. So think about how you would use that $2,000 and put in one application. Again, it's only a one-pager. It's very simple. And it, as Glenn mentioned earlier, it gets you in front of donor advised funders that may have never known about your organization before. So it's a really useful tool. Applications will be accepted also in the month of February when we open up our grant round. And I'm going to be putting that over to Gavin, talking about the grant round dates. When we open up our grant round, we're also going to open up the grant catalog at the same time. That's a little different from last year because we opened up the catalog when the grant application period closed. This year, we're opening it at the same time. So watch out for that. All right, so let's talk about the 2025 grants. And we're going to get right into it. The Pendle Fund is back, and it will be awarding organizations delivering projects and activities in many focus areas as it's listed. Okay, so these grants are offered up to a maximum of $30,000. And again, you can be in arts and culture, youth and children and youth, education, environment, Indigenous projects, physical and mental health projects, so basically almost everything that will be accepted in the Pendle Fund. Just a little mention on the Pendle Fund. It is a very competitive fund. We get a lot of applications in this fund. So please make sure when you're applying to the Pendle Fund to be very specific on your needs and make sure that you can deliver these projects just like all the other ones. Okay, so that's the Pendle Fund. We also have the Hazel McCallion Arts and Culture and Heritage Fund. And these are awarded to people that are in the arts, culture, and heritage sector. So put your grant applications, those go up to a maximum of $10,000. Next one is the Smart and Caring Children and Youth Fund. And this is obviously projects that relate to children and youth. And there's a maximum of $3,000 in this particular grant. The Novo Nordisk Chronic Disease Fund. And thank you, Novo Nordisk, for being our partner again. I think this is the 4th year that we have been working with Novo Nordisk to combat chronic disease. So these grants will be awarded to charitable and community organizations undertaking initiatives aimed at tackling the rise of chronic disease through disease prevention, stabilization, and management interventions that support equity-deserving communities that are at high risk of developing chronic disease. Improving health outcomes could be achieved by addressing social and cultural determinants of health. This slide deck will also be available on our website, so you can go back and read this information. We'll also have a lot of information in our grant applications talking about the pillars of interest of each one of these grants. But again, thank you, Novo Nordisk, for being our partner again this year and fighting chronic disease within the city. The grants offered in this round are offered up to a maximum of $25,000. Okay, so here we are. Let's talk about splitting up. Well, we're not really, okay? Why are we doing this, okay? Okay, what we're actually doing is we're splitting up our grant rounds. We were finding that our regular grant round was attracting over 180 applications, which came in all at once. So when you apply, this is a lot for our system to handle. I mean, we have a very sophisticated database, but we're talking about a very small staff and our committee members. Now, all of us, including our committee members, are dedicated to giving each application the respect it deserves. We read every word of your application, all your audited financial statements, your budgets are analyzed, as well as we look at your social media, we look at your website. All these things are taken into consideration when we are deciding. It's a very thorough process, and it's time consuming to go through each one of these applications. But we've always done this. We're very careful on what we look at. And you understand the needs of the city are growing. And we're anticipating an increase in applications as we move forward. For us to continue to give you the detailed service we've always done, we are going to be splitting up our grant round. So But for this year, the 2025 applications, they're going to be exactly the same. We're going to open it up in February. We're going to get applications for the Pendle Fund, the Children's Fund, the Hazel Fund, the Novo Nordisk Fund, all those funds that I just talked about. And many of you are familiar with those. So those can all be applied for in the usual way, okay? Going down the road, we're going to be splitting those grant rounds up. And Gavin will give you more details on the dates in a few minutes. In September, okay, 2025, we're also going to be opening up another grant round, okay? So we're going to be opening up the Pendle and the Children's grant round, but you're applying for 2026 money, okay? It's the same thing. You know how when you do an OTF grant and you're applying, and then you're applying for next year's funding? This is the same kind of idea. So again, in February, all 4 grant rounds. In September, you're going to apply for Pendle and Children in September, but you're applying for the 2026 money. Okay, so I'm going to push it over to Gavin, and he's going to talk a little more about how this is all going to work. Gavin?
Thanks, Lorraine. Hello, everyone. So just to recap what Lorraine had mentioned, for 2025, nothing changes. Everything's going to be pretty much the same. On February 1st, the grant round is going to open. And in addition, and what's different this year, is the grant catalog is also going to open at the same time. Last year, the grant catalog opened up in April. So as Lorraine mentioned earlier, it's going to open up earlier this time, February 1st. And that's going to last for the entire month. So for the entire month of February is going to be grants application intake. So it's going to be all of the 4 grants, competitive grants that were just mentioned, as well as the grants catalog. At the end of February at 5 p.m., the grant catalog and the grant application intake is going to close for the 2025 grants. What's going to happen then is in the spring, in April 2025, that is when you're going to be notified via email through our granting system of the decision. Okay, so if it's approved or declined. And then in May of this year, the grants are going to be paid out for the 2025 grants. And just a reminder, all the projects for the 2025 grant round, you have about 1 year to complete the activities, and they have to be done by June 1st. So that's 2025. Nothing changes, it's status quo. Now, as Lorraine mentioned as well, later on this year, the 2026 grant round is going to open up early for 2 grants. It's going to be the Pendle grant and the Smart and Caring Children and Youth grant. So for those 2 grants, you're going to get to apply for those earlier in September of this year. So on September 3rd, at 9 a.m., the grant round is going to open for 2026 grants for Pendle and Smart and Caring Children. And that's going to be the month of September pretty much. So September 3rd to September 30th. And then that application period is going to close. And then you're going to get the decisions the following year in 2026 and paid out in 2026. So again, these are 2026 grants. You're going to apply for these 2 earlier. And you have 1 year to complete these projects. So you're going to ask yourself, what about the other 2 grants? Well, the other 2 grants would be the Hazel and the Novo Nordisk 2026 grants. Those are going to be available in February 1st, 2026. Okay. And again, the grant catalog is also going to be open. So you have a month in February. Likewise, in April, you're going to have your decisions and payouts in May. So a lot of dates are being thrown out there, and not to worry, we're going to have all of these dates published on our website. There's going to be links, I believe, in the chat that's going to direct you there. Take some time to look at these dates, digest them, and of course, any questions, just reach out to us. So to recap, 2025, nothing changes. All 4 grants will be available starting in February. And decisions will be made in spring, and payouts will be made out in spring as well. That's 2025, nothing changes. And I should also say for 2026, you'll get to apply for 2 of the grants ahead of time, with the other 2 the following year. Just a friendly reminder, when it comes to these 2026 grants, we are going to be sending out reminders out to folks probably in the end of August and early September. So not to worry, you will be getting reminders about these. So just keep a lookout in your emails for that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Lorraine for frequently asked questions.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. Yeah, again, all those dates are going to be published on our website. We'll be sending reminders out to you about that September round. It's a little different this year. So yeah, not to worry. We're here for you. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Okay, so let's get into frequently asked questions. All right, can two charities partner on one application? And I touched on that a little bit in our introduction. Again, if two charities can collaborate on, they can either be both registered charities or that not-for-profit situation, because we can only fund right now registered charities. We have been in the process, you know, for those people that have attended a couple of sessions for us in the previous years, you'll know that we were working on with CRA to be able to accept not-for-profit applications. We are still working, it's going into more than 2 years now, with CRA, who are very close to hopefully giving us that authority to be able to accept not-for-profit applications. But as it stands right now, we can only take registered charity applications. So with the registered charity application, if you're a not-for-profit, again, repeating myself, but it's worth saying, you can partner with a registered charity and a not-for-profit and apply together. Or you can be two registered charities. Here's an example. An arts charity partners with the Senior Center for a Hazel grant. Neither organization can apply for a Hazel again by themselves, okay? So if you're coming in as a partner, then typically you are not going to be applying for that round yourself, because you are applying in the grant round, okay? So two charities, yes, can apply. If you're confused about that, because I find that a lot of people say, you know, it sounds simple, but depending on what you're doing with that partner, you may have some questions about it. Again, we're always here for you, and reach out and ask us about that if you are planning on partnering with someone. If you are partnering with somebody, get working on that now, okay? Because you need to be filling in that agreement that's online together, and you both have to identify what, how you're going to be working in that particular application together. Okay, so it takes some work to do that. You may have been working with another charity already and have some experience in that. Okay, so that's that question. Can a not-for-profit application apply? I think I already answered that. Okay, I'm skipping over things. Yes, they can with a registered charity and a partnership agreement. We can go to the next question. If a project has been funded in previous years, does that mean it's guaranteed to be granted this year? No, every year funding is granted for a single year. Even if your project or program has received funding for several years in the past, this does not imply future funding, okay? I have to stress this because we've had some people disappointed. You know, you funded our program many years and all of a sudden we got a no. Remember, it's a very competitive grant round, and every year we're looking at every single word of every single application. And the funders make decisions, as well as the committees make decisions on what to fund each year. So there is no guarantee. And it's a very competitive. If you look at our vital signs report, you might find that interesting, that there's over 800 charities in Mississauga. 400 our charities are really community-based outreaching charities. A number of charities that are already registered are also faith-based organizations, which again, you can be a faith-based organization, but do community work. But take a look at our vital signs and see, you know, all the great work that's being done in Mississauga, and you can understand why our grant round is so competitive. So answering this question again, emphatically, Just because we've funded you in the past doesn't mean that you get a guarantee for this year as again. But apply, and please, we will always read your application and it will be adjudicated. Next slide. The program we are applying for funding exists across Peel Region. And I saw a question in the chat about that, which is really great that you reached out about this. Again, you could be doing work in other areas. Peel Region, we have some people doing work in Toronto, some people doing work in Oakville, some people doing work in Hamilton. But when you are applying, tell us how many residents you're serving in Mississauga and how you are recruiting those clients, how you're servicing them. So again, you can be in other regions doing work in great work in other regions. But on the application, we need to know what you're doing in Mississauga for the benefit of Mississauga residents. Be very clear about that, because I'll be honest with you, when our committees look at, oh, this organization, it's in Oakville, what are they doing for people in Mississauga? Be very clear about how many people you're servicing in Mississauga and how you are servicing them. Okay. Next question. Are late applications accepted? No. That's a simple answer. No. If you're late, you're late. Our system shuts down. You cannot put in any more attachments. And that also means you'll just note, I mean, I know that I had a situation where our system, it closes right at the 5 o'clock on the final day. And then I had somebody trying to send me their audited financial statements and some more material on their grant application. That doesn't work. Okay, so make sure it's complete. And as a grant writer myself for many years, what I tried to do, and I'm sympathetic to you people out there, grant writing is not an easy task. And especially if you have a number of grants that you're writing, you got to keep them organized. And I know that your grant is probably going to be edited either by your ED or several people in your organization. And it's tough to meet those deadlines sometimes. But I would always try to put in my grant application at least a week before it's actually due. So instead of saying, okay, it's due the last day of February, do your best to file it early. Don't be that person trying to stuff it in at 4:59 and it's closing at 5 o'clock. Okay. I've been there. I know what it's like. I feel for you, but trust me, if you put it in earlier, it's much easier on your life. And also for us as the community foundation, we're looking at those grant applications as they're coming in. So no, the answer is no. We do not accept late applications. Okay, can we apply to more than one grant fund? Great question. I get this all the time. Everybody asks me this. Okay, you can go in all 4 grant rounds. You could put something in Nova Nordisk. You can put something in Pendle, in the Children's Fund, in the Hazel Fund, but they have to be very specific projects, different projects in each fund, okay? And be honest with you, you can't fool us, okay? If you're using the same project and putting a different name on it, we can figure that out pretty quickly. Okay, I've seen that happen. It has to be a completely separate project if you're applying in more than one grant round. Okay, here's an example. ABC Charity applies to Hazel for the art mural project. They can also apply in Pendle, but it must be for a completely different project, okay? Otherwise, both applications will be declined, okay? We've seen that happen. Somebody puts something in children, they put the same application in Pendle, you're breaking the rules, both applications are now ineligible, okay? So don't do that. Make sure if you're applying in other funding rounds that it's a completely different project, okay? So you can apply different projects. All right, so I'm going to put this over to Gavin. If you've received a grant, he's going to tell you what are the next steps.
Thanks, Lorraine. Okay, so if you've been awarded a grant, you're going to receive an email from us, from our automated system. And it's going to basically ask you for two things. It's going to ask you for a grant agreement, which is like a contract, and a grant report. So for the grant agreement part, it's again a contract, and it's going to contain an EFT form. And all that is a form that allows you to put in your banking information. You fill that in and you submit it along with a void check through our automated system. So we're not going to be accepting any emails. It's going to be all through our GLM granting system, which you will have access to because you've already applied using it when you fill out your application. The due date for agreements is going to be April 25th. But again, we're going to have all these dates published for you on our website, so not to worry. But grant agreements, when they're sent to you, you have about a week or so to review them, provide your banking information, and submit it back to us through our system. We should also say as well to remember to acknowledge the grants. Okay, in your communications, in your marketing, on your website. On our website, we have a reporting recognition area where you can go to see how best to word things. So please go on our website to check that out. And a friendly reminder, our name has changed. We are no longer the Community Foundation of Mississauga. We are now the Mississauga Foundation. So just make sure that when you are making any type of announcements or recognition, you do use our new name as well as our new branding. If you go onto our website as well, we have our brand assets all on there. So we encourage you to go on there and download the new brand to use in your communications. So yeah, the other document you're going to receive is the grant report. So the grant report is pretty much a report that you'll have to fill out, letting us know how your activity went. You'll have to let us know how you spent the funds, what the outcomes were, if you met your objectives, so on and so forth. And again, this is all done through our granting system. It's not an email. In the past, we have received emailed reports. And what we've said is, thank you, but we do encourage the folks to go back into the system and resubmit it through the portal. In addition, the grant report is also going to ask you to submit photos. Okay, so photos from your project, please upload those in the document. There is a space to do that because we would like to show those pictures in our marketing as well. So we encourage you to do that. And again, that is the grant report. And Lorraine had mentioned earlier about the due dates. So, without going into too much detail again, whenever your project is finished, you have 30 days from that end date to submit your grant reports to us. And you will be receiving reminders from us as well. So not to worry, reminders from our system if any reports are late. And finally, invite us out to the site. We would like to do some site visits after the granting round is over and after all of the decisions are made and the activities are pretty much complete. Please send us an email, or Lorraine and myself will also be sending out emails to you to see how things are going and maybe see if we can arrange a site visit. So with that, I will turn it back over to Lorraine, and we're going to probably take a look at some questions if any have popped into the Q&A.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Gavin. Yeah, and you finished off with the visits. I mean, for Gavin and I'd be honest with you, that's the most fun. I mean, a lot of the work that we do, looking at all your applications and things like that, we get really excited about your projects. And it's really great to see the fine work that you're doing in the community. We can't exist without the fine work you're doing, so we can't thank you enough. All right, so let's take a look at some of the questions. I'm looking at a question here. Thank you, Angela, for putting this question in. Can applicants apply to the catalog of community needs and any of the grant streams for the same project? Okay, the catalog of community needs goes to different funders. They're going to donor advised funders. So yeah, you can do that. Absolutely, you can. You can say if you put in a little project for the children's grant for $3,000 and you're adding on to that project for, you're asking for the $2,000 in the community needs, and it sort of relates to the same thing. Sure. Remember that the catalog of community needs is an unrestricted bucket of money. So you can apply. Yes, I hope that answers your question, Angela. Here's an anonymous person. Do you fund existing projects or only new projects? And if you do, if you don't fund existing projects, do you accept expansion or improvements on existing projects? We do all of that, actually. We fund existing projects, we fund new projects, we fund expansion and improvements on existing projects. So sure, I mean, if it's meeting, I think the main thing is meeting the need of the community, especially go back to your vital signs, is the need of the community is identified, then we will accept those applications. I hope that answers your question, by anonymous person. Okay, does previous funding granted and successfully utilized and reported, does that affect approval process for new funding for a truly new project in future years? No. Is it part of the marking and grading system? Not necessarily, Christine, you're asking me this question. We look at projects every year. We have fresh eyes on projects every single year. So if it's been funded previously and reported and it's a successful project, again, they don't always have to be new. They have to be meeting the needs of the community. That's really, that's what we're looking for. Okay, and you can go back to that other slide that we had about is it aligned? Are you staying in your mission statement? All those things that I discussed before, those are the items that we're looking at with every grant application. Okay, I hope that answers your question. If we applied last year in the grant catalog, do we apply again this year? Yes, every year it's brand new. Okay, so you can put it in. And where do you find that? You just log into our system. And as soon as the grant catalog is live, you will be able to find that portal to go into it. Okay. Is there any other questions? Gavin, are you there that you would like to pick up and answer?
We've been replying to answers as they were coming in. Let's see. So
there are a couple, Lorraine, in the webinar chat.
Okay.
Can we apply for organizational development to catalog for community needs?
Organizational development. Thank you, Pauline. That's Pauline, our office manager, doing amazing things on always for our organization and looking after us completely. Thank you, Pauline. Yeah, the question is, remember, catalog of community needs is unrestricted money. So yes, you can certainly apply for operations in that catalog. Absolutely. Okay, and I see there's one more question. Based on your number last year, how many projects were funded through the community catalog? I don't have that number on here. I don't know exactly, but we'll get back to you, anonymous attendee. Because they were broken up, like some people, a lot of people apply for the full 2,000, right? And we had one funder that, like so many of these projects, that they divided them up. And I think a lot of them got like $750 each or something like that. So good question. How many we funded? We can get back to you on that if you need the exact number.
I've got one more from the chat side of things. What percentage of funds are possible for environmental issues? This is from Alice.
What percentage?
Yeah.
Again, when you're applying, we're looking at all the applications with the same eyes. We don't divide up what percentage would be going to environmental funds. If your application is a strong one and it's in the right funding stream, then it will be considered. So there's no percentages. I mean, we do get asked that question, say, do you normally just fund food insecurity projects, or like how, because I didn't get funded, did you fund other environmental projects? Again, every year, brand new eyes on every application. So we don't have, a certain goal to fund any pillar of interest to a certain percentage. No. All right. So unless there are any other questions, and I think we're good. Pauline, do you see anything else in the back end?
I don't see anything else, no.
Okay,
Oh, wait.
thank you.
Yep, nope, that was
Yeah.
just thank yous.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you for watching all that for us. And again, final words. Thank you again for attending this session. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to Gavin and myself. Gavin being the manager of the grants, community initiatives, and also the wizard of the database. Gavin is my right and my left hand, doing all that back end things. So appreciative of all the work the whole team does. And our leader, Glenn Gomoka, doing great things for the Mississauga Foundation and for the community. Again, read that vital signs. I think you'll be very impressed with the data. You can use it not only for your grant applications with us, but for your own organization going forward. Thank you again for attending, and send us your questions if you have anything else. Okay, bye for now.